Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We've got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Flagstaff track and field coach Matthew Barquin, who will break down the difficulties in coaching each event. We'll then be joined by Prescott High School baseball coach Kent Winslow to talk about his 20 years with the program. And on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Lee Williams baseball coach Patrick O'Boyle, who will discuss how his team can translate 2019 success into 2021. And at the end of the show, we will break down the updated mask mandate for the upcoming spring season. All of that and a whole lot more right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Lee Williams, high school baseball coach Patrick O'Boyle. Coach O'Boyle, welcome on to the program.
Thank you for having me, Philip. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you. 2019, a pretty solid year for the Volunteers, going 15-1, included a trip to the playoffs. Obviously, COVID-19 kind of tarnished any hopes of similar success carrying from that 2019 season. So, Coach, I want to start with this. With that gap year, how do you sort of try to get back on track where you guys were in 2019, having that basically 2020 year be thrown out?
Well, every year is different. As you probably know, in high school baseball, we were pretty fortunate to have some pretty talented seniors and the Bathauer twins. They kind of carried us wherever we really wanted to go, and they were going to take us as far as we wanted to go, and we were fortunate enough to have that. We had a couple young pieces who are now seniors on this team start on that team, so we've been fortunate there as well. And obviously, you know, the hard feelings go out to the seniors of last year. You know, we could have had a pretty decent team again, but, you know, we're just kind of taking it one day at a time. You never know with COVID. You've seen a lot in the college, especially college football landscape. You know, it can wipe out a team pretty quickly. So we're being pretty smart with how we handle ourselves, just taking it day by day and hoping we get better every day.
You know, Coach, I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of the Marvel movies, but obviously in the Avengers movies, they had Thanos do the snap and everybody was gone for a short amount of time. And then everybody came back and they were older and everyone looked different. It's kind of like where we're at now here in 2019. We had 2020, we had the snap of 2020. And now here in 2021, everybody's starting to rematerialize and show back up and try to figure out what happened the past year. But, you know, Coach, I want to talk a little bit about your preparation. You talk about being a little more cautious this season. In terms of your preparation for the 2021 season, are you being cautious with who you select? Are you being more selective? Are you just, you know, taking this, you know, possibility of having a good spring season and having no issues very lightly? Where are you in terms of your preparation this season compared to previous seasons?
So fortunately enough, I'm also the football coach here at Lee Williams. So,
yes.
So I'm going to take a lot of the experiences we had to do this fall and kind of implement those in the baseball season, as far as telling our kids just to be smart who you're hanging out with. Obviously, we're fortunate that baseball is an outside sport and it's a social distance sport based on its nature. You know, no time are you within 5 feet of somebody unless you're the pitcher or unless you're the catcher or the umpire or the batter. So really, I mean, we're just being smart, making sure we're doing things the right way, you know, making sure hands are getting washed. We're in the weight room every day. Masks are being worn. Just different things like that, making sure kids are bringing their own water bottles, just stuff that not even 2 years ago, not even this time last year, we weren't aware of how cautious we had to be as far as our health and as far as how quick this could happen. But fortunately right now, knock on wood, we haven't had any big issues. Kids are being really, really good about being in the practice field, in the weight room every day. We've probably had on average about 25 to 30 kids in the winter. So it's been really fortunate for us as far as the development of our younger players, especially, and our older players. So we've been very fortunate.
Very nice. Yeah, you are correct. Obviously, you are also the football coach here at Lee Williams High School. We're very familiar with you here, being the broadcast team for Mingus. You guys ran all over the Mingus Marauders this past football season with your quarterback, who I compared to Kyler Murray because of how quick he was, and a very, very exciting football matchup between the Volunteers and the Marauders this season. But Coach, here on the baseball field, I know you're a baseball guy. How does it feel to get back out onto the grass, out playing catch again and getting ready for what could be a relatively normal spring season?
We're just very fortunate, and like you said, I'm a baseball guy through and through. Played college football at the collegiate level, but I've always been a baseball guy at heart, and it's just kind of where my heart is. And so first day of winter baseball, we stepped back on the field, and I had a brief moment with my coaching staff, and I was just like, man, I really love being out here. And you take it for granted, it got taken away from us last year, and you just don't ever know when it's going to be that last time you're out on the field. And so I tell our boys that all the time. The seniors last year, they got taken away without them even knowing. So you better take it as this is your last time on the field every time you come out here. But it's just been such a blessing to get back out here and get grinding and work for what our goals are this year.
Coach, your sunglasses gave away the baseball mentality that you got. Obviously, you're wearing a ball cap here for those who are listening on the radio. He's got the Oakleys turned upside down on the top of the hat. Very much the in baseball mode here for Coach Patrick O'Boyle, the head baseball coach and also head football coach at Lee Williams High School. But, Coach, you mentioned it. Obviously, you've had a little bit of preparation with the fall season going into the spring because you are the football coach there. So you're used to, what you need to tell the guys to keep them away from other people, what they need to be prepared for if they have to wear a mask, your preparation for the season as well. You mentioned it, you alluded to it a little bit. You guys have been able to hold fall and winter practices. I want to talk more about the experience level of some of the new guys coming out. Are you getting a lot of returners? Are you getting more first-time baseball players? Are you getting a lot of sort of, I used to play baseball in middle school, but I took some time off and now I'm coming back here for my junior, freshman, or whatever year at the high school?
So we kind of have a mix here at Lee Williams, just with the geography that we're in. We have 3 high schools here, for those of you that don't know that. Town of 30,000 people with 3 high schools, so we're kind of watered down to some sorts. But so we will get those. We have a lot of returners coming back. I think we probably have 7 seniors coming back on this team from the team 2 years ago. Not all of those guys played varsity baseball, but I think 3 or 4 of them did. So we have a lot of guys that have varsity baseball experience, obviously played varsity baseball as well last year. But we also have those, that come. We have more of the younger group that haven't ever played before. So, they may have gotten cut in middle school. They may have played the city league stuff, the little league baseball type of deal. So our numbers are still pretty strong. We'll probably anticipate 45 to 48 kids this year in our baseball program. So, again, we're very fortunate that kids love baseball in Kingman, but like I said, it's kind of all over the map. It's just kind of, class every year is different as far as who's in each class. Next year we're not looking at a very strong senior class. We'll have a couple, but it won't be the 6 to 7 guys we have this year.
Coach, what do you find that young baseball players struggle with when they either have to reestablish themselves with the sport or if they're approaching the sport for the first time?
The biggest thing is hand-eye coordination. It's such an advanced game for those of you that don't know the game very well, or if you're just a first-time watcher. It's a very intricate game that has a lot of moving parts, but it doesn't seem like that because there's only one ball thrown at a time. But each pitch is just different, and just trying to catch them up to how you play the game at the high school level is the biggest challenge, and how to see different things that they might have not gotten accustomed to at the even the middle school or little league level.
Right. Yeah, very much so. I've many a times caught a fly ball to the nose because I didn't have my glove in the right position, or caught a ground ball to the upper lip, which is always a lot of fun. But yeah, hand-eye coordination. A lot of people think that baseball is very easy to play, but it's really hard to hit a fastball or even hit a curveball in a lot of scenarios. But Coach, excuse me, I mentioned it earlier. You mentioned it. You're also the football coach. So I want to ask you this. Any kind of cross-recruiting going on with you for football, or going on to your baseball team? Do you look at your receiver and go, hey, this guy can catch. We need an outfielder. Let's see if we can get this guy out here. Is there any sort of cross-recruiting going on within your own two programs?
Oh, very much so. I mean, and I've been very fortunate enough with the athletes that we do have here. I mean, if you look at our baseball team, I think only about 5 of the kids in our program don't play football. So we're just trying we're very fortunate that we can get them in multiple sports, and they know how we coach, so they're familiar with us. They know our style. They can get comfortable with us. We know them on a personal level, not just on an athletic level as well. Yeah. And also, my coaching staff is very, very good. My offensive coordinator is my first base coach. My young JV O-line coach, he's our JV coach. So we have a lot of that cross sport going on. I'm fighting this year a little bit more because my receivers coach took the head track coaching job. So he's kind of pulling some athletes. That's the first time I've had to deal with that. So, I mean, he's a great guy, great coach, and we're thankful that he can draw those kids to track as well.
You got to drop the hammer down, Coach. You got to make a list of guys that are untouchable, that no other program can have, because you need them on the baseball field this season. But no, of course, a very collaborative effort between your football coaches, and now a lot of them crossing over to the baseball side, or as you mentioned, one of your coaches becoming one of the track coaches at Lee Williams High School, which we will have to get a chance to speak with him at some point as well, as track season kicks off in the spring as well. We are speaking with Lee Williams High School baseball coach Patrick O'Boyle. Coach O'Boyle, you talk about the lower levels with your JV coaches. How are the lower levels shaping up? And I want to ask you this: during your fall and winter practices, what are you specifically looking for from players to go, you know what, when we roll around for spring, that guy's going to be playing left field for me, or that guy is going to be my pitcher? What intangibles are you looking for from a JV player before they make the jump to the varsity level?
Just, are they able to function developmentally at a consistent level? Okay. Especially with the JV program, you're 15, 16 years old most times. You're still learning how your body's growing. You're getting stronger every day. You're growing, it seems like, 4 inches throughout the school year. So, I mean, you have a lot of growing pains to deal with too. So a lot of these guys are still learning how their bodies work. Just those guys that develop consistently and can show consistently at practice, hey, I can throw, I can catch, I can run, I can hit at a decent level. And those kids that want to push themselves further, and the next step is the mind. If you can think at that varsity level, that's when we say, hey, you might have a shot here, or hey, you can play this position and this is your spot to lose right now. So that's kind of the way we handle things, and that's kind of the way we develop.
You know, Coach, when I was a kid growing up, a lot of the big major leaguers were Derek Jeter, Barry Bonds. A lot of guys wanted to be Randy Johnson on the mound. Or for me growing up in Southern California, I guess now it'd be Clayton Kershaw on the mound. But for you, have you noticed throughout your time coaching at Lee Williams, are there any positions that are a little harder to fill when you're filling out your roster? I know that when we played Little League, the outfield was kind of the position that was seen as a bad spot because the ball was never hit out into the outfield. Obviously, at the high school level, the outfield is very significant. But I'm curious, are there any positions that you find a little tough to fill, not specifically on your team, but maybe just in the past or in general?
I think the number one spot you have to look at is the catching position. What I come from, if you don't have a good catcher, I don't care how good the rest of your field is, that's the first place you're going to get beat. That and the ability to throw strikes on the mound. Now I noticed I didn't say strikeouts. I said strikes. We preach to our pitchers, let your defense play. Catchers, your job is to keep the ball in front at all times. So we put a very heavy emphasis on pitching and catching here. The rest of it, we kind of just look for athletes that can play. Can you move? Or do you have good feet? Are your hands soft enough to play in the infield? Or are you a guy that just wants to run and track down balls like a golden retriever in the outfield? Right. So, I mean, we kind of have a specific model, but I would say first and foremost catching, and we put a very heavy emphasis, and we've been very, very blessed to have the long line of catchers that we have throughout the years, and the Mike Bathhours, the Robert Paulsons, now the Dylan Peterson. We have a couple young catchers coming up as well. So,
So the catching position's looking pretty solid there at Lee Williams High School. I myself was a catcher as well. I played catcher all through Little League, through travel ball, a little bit into high school. And I have an admiration for the catching position. My sister was a catcher in softball. She was a Division III athlete or a Division II athlete. I agree. I think catching is and can be one of the more difficult positions. You're essentially the captain of the infield. Center field is the captain of the outfield. You control a lot of the momentum of the game. You get a good catcher, you can tell the speed of the game is going well. You get a real good catcher and you can take some balls away and turn them into strikes. I mean, there's just a lot of different intricacies when it comes to that catching position that isn't just squatting down and catching the ball in front of you. But I love the catching position. But Coach, I want to talk now a little bit about the region. We'll get a chance to speak with Coach Kent Winslow of Prescott High School here in a little bit. But I want to get your opinions first here. The region itself, obviously, everybody is on the same playing field in terms of last season. Nobody got to play 2020. So coming into the region this season, Coach, we know that there are a few schools that graduated, a few seniors. You talked about a few key seniors that you lost this season. Do you feel that this year could really be an up for grabs season for the region?
Yeah, and I mean, every year's different. Obviously, like you hinted on, I mean, nobody got to see anybody last year, so nobody really knows what everybody has. Right. There's been some coaching changes as far as what happened to Coconino, and that's obviously going to come into play, I'm sure. But and Mojave got a new coach, so you never know. But really what we try to focus on is just ourselves here. Obviously you do kind of spend some time screen peeking and looking around at rosters, looking around at stats, trying to do the scouting thing. But really, first and foremost, we try to focus on what we got going here, and we preach to our guys, you can't look at anybody as, hey, they're the best or they're the worst. You have to come in and play your best game every single day. But, I mean, every year the region's up for grabs, and, we just got to come out and be better than we were yesterday.
Yeah, Coach, I think you hit it right there on the head is, you can prepare all you want. Obviously, no one's seen each other since 2019, basically. You have to consider 2020 as a wash, and I couldn't agree more. I think the region is very much up for grabs, and we'll see if that's a consensus throughout the rest of the 4A Grand Canyon region as we get ready for spring practice to get kicked off March 1st. You can get practice going off, Coach. Your first game is March 16th against the Mingus Marauders. How you feeling against those Marauders, and how does it feel to get the season going?
We're excited. We've played a lot of winter baseball. We probably played upwards of 45 games this winter. So we've got basically a full season ahead of us already. But again, that means nothing once the season starts on Monday. So, I mean, obviously those reps help, but we have to keep our focus. Eric and I have a pretty good relationship, the head baseball coach there at Mingus. Great guy. I really get along with Eric very, very well. And he's a great coach. He'll have his team ready to go. So, I mean, we're going to have to do the same on our end. But, again, we just got to focus on ourselves, and then hopefully things go the way we want to based on how we perform.
That is Lee Williams baseball coach Patrick O'Boyle. The Volunteers start their season on March 16th against the Mingus Marauders. You're definitely going to want to check that one out. We'll be out there on March 18th for the second game against Lee Williams and Mingus. That is tentatively scheduled. So we're looking forward to it, Coach. We're looking forward to the start of the spring season. I know you are as well. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show, and best of luck going forward.
I appreciate it, Philip. Thank you for having me on.
Again, Lee Williams baseball coach Patrick O'Boyle getting the season prepared here as we get ready for the spring season. I'm going to stop talking now and send it to a break here. I want to thank Coach O'Boyle for coming back on, and we're going to take a quick break off the bench. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome, everybody, to Off the Bench Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Flagstaff High School track and field coach and JV girls soccer coach, Coach Matthew Barquin. Coach Barquin, welcome onto the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I pronounced that correctly, right?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, fantastic. Just wanted to make sure. We ran over it a little bit before the show, and I didn't get a chance to practice. But Coach Barquin spent some time coaching at Supine Middle School. That's where he got his start as a coach. He then moved over to Central High School in Phoenix, culminating in his big return to his alma mater, Flagstaff High School, to come back and coach the same program that he participated in. Coach Barquin was a hurdler at Flagstaff High School when he was there. He comes back to coach that program. So, Coach, was that the plan initially when you started out in your coaching career? You're also, I believe, a math teacher as well at Flagstaff High School. Was that always the plan to go, when there's an opening up in Flag, I'm going back and I want to coach there?
Yeah, that was the ultimate goal. It was all about timing. I was very beneficial to be at Central High School for my first high school kind of run. And my wife and I at the time had always decided, or fiance at the time, we were always hoping to come to Flagstaff. I got very lucky that it opened that next year after my first year of teaching at Central, and jumped this way and jumped right into it. I actually coached golf my first year at Flag High because they needed help. I'm not a great golfer.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
We're both really good at wearing polos as opposed to playing golf. Yeah, I'm terrible at golf, and I think I would have struggled as well. As we just mentioned, Coach, you also coach JV soccer at Flagstaff High School. The team just finished their regular season schedule. Obviously, there's no playoffs at the JV level. Congratulations on the win. I believe that was yesterday, so earlier this week, a solid victory for the Flagstaff JV team. They finish out 5-3. The varsity team, on the other hand, is looking really good. They're sitting at number 4 in the conference, and I believe they are still at the top of the 4A Grand Canyon region. Coach, in your opinion for the JV season, how did you feel the season went?
You know what? Great. Especially I want to congratulate my team for sticking through it. I mean, we at one point, the season was canceled on us. Yeah. And my girls still stuck around, which is very impressive because throughout the whole state, teams were dropping left and right, just saying, we don't have enough girls for JV. I had 19 at one point on my roster. So very proud of my girls for sticking through the season and dedicating all the way through and having 19 girls. At one point, I had to call some 5A schools, say, hey, do you want to play? Because Bradshaw canceled, Lee Williams canceled, Mingus canceled. It was left and right. So I'm very proud of how my girls did.
Yes, a very challenging 2020 to early 2021 season. But as you mentioned, thankfully, we were able to finish the season, had to wear masks the entire time. But of course, that has changed for the soccer playoffs and as well for the spring season, which we will talk about at the end of the show. So, Coach, throughout the soccer season, are you doing any in-program recruiting? Are you looking at some of the varsity soccer girls or some of your JV soccer girls and going, we do kind of need somebody to run the 800 meter, or maybe she can throw a javelin? Are you doing any kind of cross recruiting?
So quite a bit. Since I joined in, I've been trying to put that in the ear, especially, girls soccer, we can destroy at the 400 and the 4x4 and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, because of the overlap this year, some of the varsity girls I won't see until after spring break, but I think I have at least 5 girls come off of the varsity roster joining us. And then JV, I think I have 5 as well, who I'll probably see today. Some of them are like, hey, our game's over at 2:30. Can I come to practice for track? I'm like, how about you take the day off? I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. But you got to love the dedication, though, for somebody to come off of a soccer game and then want to go and run more, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Coach, and again, we were speaking with Flagstaff High School track and field coach and JV head coach Matthew Barquin. Coach Barquin, we obviously know that 2020 was a wash of a season, so I want to take a step back even further. Let's go 2019. The team placed quite well in many events in track and field that year. A lot of top 5 finishers. I think a couple first place finishers. Regardless, it was a successful season anyway. 3rd place in boys 800 meter relay. So coming into this year here in 2021, I use the analogy with Coach O'Boyle of Lee Williams High School when it kind of feels like, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel movies. Thanos does the snap and everybody disappears and they come back and people are 5 years older than they were. And it kind of feels like that because 2020, a lot of your sophomores are now seniors. The juniors are gone. Your freshmen are now juniors. Everybody's a lot older now. So Coach, kind of going back to the success of 2019, what does your team have to do this year to sort of translate that success from a good 2019 over the wasted year of 2020 here into 2021?
I think the biggest thing that working with my other coaching staff is just kind of seeing who's good at what. Like right now, my sprinters, jumpers, and hurdlers are all working together. And then today, I'm going to make them all jump. I'm going to make them all hurdle just to find out who is that standout that might not have ever thought of hurdling or triple jumping, but it's like, ooh, you are athletic enough, you are coordinated enough to do it. And maybe they never thought about it, but let's try it for this first week of put them through the ringer and see what sticks.
Coach, you, as I mentioned, you do have a few returners coming from that 2019 team. Obviously, the sophomores are now seniors this year. So a couple key names to think about: Allie Thurgood, Katrina Vollmer. Obviously, you lose Max Davis. He transferred away from Flagstaff High School. Big a loss for the program. But regardless, you still move forward here into 2021. Who else should we keep an eye out on for this season?
You know what? There's a good handful. We have Gunnar Price, who should be returning for us, one of our sprinters. The girls that I have coming in from the varsity soccer team, I think the speed behind them, Danny Shanahan, has been one of my solid sprinter girls who will be coming back that I'm excited to see her speed because I've seen it on soccer for years and years, and she's coming back. So I think there's a big thing is we're going to be surprised by athletes. Already day one, it was hard to figure out who was who since everyone was still wearing masks at the time. So I'm like, who's that person running? Because you could see that ability. I just need to put a name behind a mask now. So it'll be an interesting year.
Very much so, and it should be. And in terms of the division, Coach, a lot of the teams in the division may have graduated their heavy senior class from last year. A few of them going, oh, okay, well, 2019 we struggled, but we're going to be back here in 2020, and we're gonna probably be a contender for the division. Oh, 2020's gone. Now we have to look into 2021 and we don't have as strong a class. So I want to ask you, in your opinion, do you feel like the division is wide open for anybody to find success if they didn't have it in 2020 or to take over the division?
I really think so, especially just after going through soccer. There were so many programs that they folded or they didn't have the returns they thought they would. And we could see some standouts. You can see that in our rankings right now for soccer. I think that's going to translate into track as well, that there's going to be some divisions and some schools that aren't going to have as many kids come back that they would hope for. We took a hit a little bit. Usually we're between 130 and 150 kids that come out for my program. This year we're at about 100. Now I know there's some kids that are in basketball that haven't signed up because they're focused on their current sport. So I think my numbers are going to get a little closer, but that tells me that we could pop out and surprise some people because we've always been kind of on that flirtation of a program that could take off at state. And I think this year we could take advantage of the situation if we have that depth come out.
In terms of that depth, Coach, let's even go into more experience would be the question to transition here to. You talk about, obviously, you've got some basketball players who may potentially be joining the team a little later. Soccer, obviously, there's a few girls who might be looking at a little playoff run there as the Flagstaff varsity team is looking quite good. Boys basketball as well, boys soccer. But Coach, in terms of the experience level of people who have come out, are you seeing a lot of returners? Are you getting a lot of new faces, people who have taken years off between track? What's sort of the experience level that you've seen so far from your team as we get the early iterations of your roster?
That's probably going to be where we might see some struggle. I think my seniors, last I counted 15 out of the 100 that we have signed up. So you can see that senior leadership won't be there as much, but luckily the 15 that are already out there, I've already had a couple of seniors come up saying, hey coach, like, what do I need to do to step up? And I'm very proud of, like, one of them was my long jumper. He's like, I'm the only boy senior returner. He's like, what do you need of me? And I'm like, you know what? Meets is where I'm going to rely on the kids, because with COVID, they're saying no coaches on the infield. Don't even think about it. Usually they kind of let us sneak on and help the kids, but this year we're going to be outside the fences. So we're going to rely on those seniors to help these new kids of how do you check in? How do you make sure you get your step? So we're going to rely on them. I'm very proud of the kids already saying, how can I help?
And that's great. You've got that sort of camaraderie between your team and the seniors, understanding that there are people who don't have the same experiences that they do, and they can come in and fill in the blanks that you guys can't. You just talked about it. You're not going to see a lot of coaches on the field, physically on the actual field. You'll see them on the sidelines, but there's not a whole lot that you can do directly during that event where you are going to have to rely on those more experienced track players to sort of fill in the gaps for coaching. Coach, transitioning here regarding coaching, what is your approach to track and field? We talked a little bit about this beforehand. Obviously, track and field's got a lot of events. Some events can translate with one coach. What is your approach to coaching these events? Do you feel like you're taking on multiple events as one coach? Do you find yourself more collaborative with other coaches? What is your approach to doing that?
We are very blessed, and I know not every school is like this, but I have 10 on my staff. I try to recruit and find an event coach for everything. I do my homework. I go to the Arizona Coaching Clinic every year. I've gone through USA track and fields trainings, so that way I know at least the bare essentials. Now, I'm not going to go out there and teach shot put perfectly, but I know the bare essentials. I try to get as many coaches onto my staff as possible to spread us out and help my event coaches as much as possible. But you'll see me at every track meet. I'm jumping between each group to help as much as I can. But I rely on my coaching staff a lot because I can't do it all.
Right, of course. And again, we were speaking with Flagstaff High School track and field coach Matthew Barquin. Coach, you talked about it. You were a former hurdler at Flagstaff High School, so maybe you didn't have as much experience with the shot put or as much experience with the javelin, which is relatively returned back to high school. They brought that one back just a few years ago. So in terms of the specific events, do you find there are more events that are difficult to coach because of your lack of experience in that particular event? I know you've been coaching for a while, so you've kind of been able to pick up a little bit, but maybe if you want to even go back before when you were over at Supai Middle School or even when you were at Central coaching their track programs respectively, did you find any struggles early on with coaching other events you weren't familiar with?
Yeah, and I think you just have to go out. There's so many resources, so many videos and stuff where you can start train yourself. But what's nice about track, it all comes down to your form. Even if I don't know those complicated little tricks to help one of my field events or my pole vaulters that I don't know personally, it all comes down to the basics. So even if I can't be the best coach, if I can get them focused on the basics, I can get a solid foundation. And that's key.
Yeah, no, very much so. And I was curious if there were any events that do sort of have that translation. Obviously, the meter runs could be, it's running. So you've got the basis of running, and then you've the hurdling. You add the hurdling, and obviously that's more technique, but there's still running aspect to it. So that's interesting. And I do agree that, you can find those similarities. Obviously, you mentioned the basics of the certain sports, just making sure that people have the basics worked out, the technique worked out, just so that you've got a good foundation. And then you talked about it. You have a bunch of assistant coaches that are there to fill in the blanks. And also now you've got a good senior class or even a few upperclassmen who can also fill in the blanks there as well. Coach, how about the JV team? How are they shaping up? Are you going to be able to have numbers for those lower levels?
You know what? I think so. As I've seen, I've gotten emails from people saying, hey, we're signing up late. Is that okay? Especially because Flagstaff Unified School District is returning back to in-person learning for those who elect. So I've had quite a few parents email me saying, hey, can we come back when school opens back up after spring break? I'm like, you know what? Usually I don't like bringing kids in so late into the year just because of conditioning and stuff like that. But it's such a weird year that I'm like, yeah, come in. You might be a little behind, that's okay. And that'll fill those JV meets for us for sure.
Well, and even outside of that, coach, you could spark somebody's interest in track and field. They go, well, I wasn't really able to get a lot of time on the baseball team, or maybe I didn't really make the varsity team for basketball, but I can run and I know I can do track and field. So you might find a few more longtime track and field players with allowing some of those later stragglers to find their way onto the team.
And that's the funny thing about track is they come out their freshman year. Two of the athletes that come to mind are two of my hurdlers that I miss a lot, Maddie Wilson and Matt Stalker. They both came out as multi-sport athletes saying, hey, I just want to be in shape. Maddie Wilson was an amazing volleyball player for us. Matt Stalker was a potential basketball player. They were like, hey, I just want to stay in shape. Maddie Wilson's now breaking records at NAU, and Matt Stalker, unfortunately, he lost his senior year because of COVID, but he was on the bubble to make it for NU's track team as well. They were talking to him and they were watching him, but they originally weren't coming out for track. They were coming out just to stay in shape. And that's what I love about track is you bring an athlete out and they go, oh my gosh, I can throw a shot put, I can high jump. And they never realized it.
Yeah, very much so. I myself am not much of a runner. I have very bad shins. I can't run for very long, but I played baseball. I'm sure I could go out and try out on the shot put team or the javelin throw or any of the other multiple events that don't require me running around a track, because I can guarantee you it's not going to be good. But yeah, and Coach, kind of bouncing off of that, one more question here before we send it to break. You talk about a lot of, you just mentioned it. You had a volleyball player who said, I just want to stay in shape. I want to come and play track and field. We talked about sort of you doing that cross recruiting, that in-program recruiting with the soccer team. Do you find, and I know that, and more specifically, the question is, do you find any dedicated track players? You get a lot of kids, I just play football, or I just play softball. I go to treks. I play club softball, then I play high school softball. I'm only doing softball. Track and field, a little different. You get a lot of that crossover. Football players going over to the track and field team, basketball players, volleyball you just mentioned. Do you find any dedicated, I only do track and field? Do you find any of those dedicated players on your team?
We have a few. There's not many. Most are multi-sports, and that's what's beautiful about track is it's the multi-sport location. And that's something I want to continue to build. That was my plan originally, was to try to head out to football and recruit a little more and all these others. COVID is COVID, so I didn't be able to do that this year, but I'm hoping in the future to try to recruit from within Flagstaff a little more, especially those football players that, I do football and then I'm going to do spring ball. It's like, yes, I think spring ball is so important, but you could get more out of participating with track.
Okay, very much so. And Coach, 2020 is now in the shadows and past us. We're here in 2021. Hopefully it'll result in some good success for the Flagstaff Eagles track and field program. Again, I want to thank Coach Matthew Barquin. He is the track and field coach over at Flagstaff High School. Coach, thank you very much for coming on, and best of luck on the season.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Prescott High School baseball coach Kent Winslow. Don't go anywhere. Off the bench, we'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome to Off the Bench Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by a familiar face to the 4A Grand Canyon region, but a new face to the show. That is Prescott High School baseball coach Kent Winslow. Coach Winslow, welcome onto the program.
Thanks, Phil. It's good to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you. We're continuing our preview of the 4A Grand Canyon region. We got an opportunity to speak with Coach Eric Casada last week, and now we're making our way throughout the entire rest of the region, and we've made our way to Prescott. And Coach Winslow is not new to Arizona. He has been here for quite a long time, attending Central Arizona College, where he won a national championship as a player. You also played a little bit at Grand Canyon University, which is my alma mater. I graduated from GCU, so it's nice to talk to a fellow Lope, but you finished up your bachelor's degree at NAU, got your master's from Texas A&M. What sparked your interest to go more into the coaching route?
Well, honestly, I knew probably from a very early age that once I got done playing, I'd like to coach. My dad was a coach. He was actually the coach at Mingus. He was the first football coach at Mingus when they went from Jerome to Mingus. So we kind of got a little roots that way. But yeah, I grew up wherever he was coaching, basketball, football, whatever it was. I just kind of tagged along, and that's kind of what our family did. And I really enjoyed just the competition and those things that, you got to be around as a little kid. And I knew that it was just kind of something I figured I would probably do for a lifetime, and I was lucky the Lord blessed me that way and got to keep doing it.
Well, and you are still doing it. Of course, now you're over at Prescott, about 20 years on and off coaching the baseball program over at Prescott and being a part of Prescott High School in general. You talk about your connection to Mingus Union High School. You yourself took a small stint to be the skipper for the baseball program over at Mingus Union High School. Now, I believe, if my research is correct, you were at Prescott before you went over to Mingus and then went back to Prescott. So I want to ask, first and foremost, I guess it wouldn't have necessarily been weird to have that, MUHS on your chest, but in terms of already coaching in a 4A Grand Canyon region team and then going to another one, we saw that with Coach Bob Young this season, going from Mingus to Bradshaw. Was it a little weird to wear the Marauder uniform for that one season before you went back to the blue and yellow that you're so accustomed to now?
Well, it actually was about a 3-year period because I had left Prescott and went down to South Point Catholic again. I had been there for 10 years previously before I came to Prescott. Then I went to Casa Grande. I went to South Point for a year, Casa Grande for 2 years. And then Bob actually called me and said, "Hey, we got an opening here. What do you think?" He said, "I'd really like not to have to do both head coach baseball and football." He says, "You can have the same staff and we'll just let you be the head coach." And it was awesome. I mean, I got to work with Steve and Bob and Johnny, and Eric actually was one of my best players on that team. He was a phenomenal player that year for us and had a lot to do with our success. But it was a little difficult just from the fact that I was kind of the odd man out, but I was lucky to have Bob and Steve, especially to, kind of run a little interference and kind of let the kids know, even though, I really hadn't coached against them because I had been away for 3 years and most of them were, juniors and seniors. So it was good. It ended up being a great situation. I mean, we ended up playing in the semifinals and it was a phenomenal season. And like I said, I really respected Bob and Steve before I got there. And then after I got there, it just kind of solidified the relationship. And it was a lot of fun. It was just one of those things where I got an opportunity to go back to Prescott, and that's where we were living. And it's like, well, let's see, either drive over the mountain every day or stay home and drive 10 minutes. So it wasn't a real hard decision that way. But the kids at Mingus were great kids. I loved them. It was a lot of fun.
It's kind of interesting, the parallels between your time over at Mingus, and obviously you talked about your dad being a coach at the high school as well. You getting an opportunity to coach current baseball coach Eric Casada, who is now taking over the program that he once played it under you for. So it's kind of interesting, the connection between you and Mingus High School. But over the past 20 years, Coach Winslow, again, has been kind of on and off with Prescott High School, coming back, obviously, more recently here and coaching the program again, that being the baseball program at Prescott High School. 2020, Coach, I know it's something that you have never experienced in your lifetime, something that I've never experienced, obviously. When you got that initial information that the season was done, how were you feeling? What were your initial reactions? How were you able to tell the team? And that's pretty much all that there is to that question.
Yeah, it was really difficult because, like you said, it was something that we had never gone through before. And there was so much uncertainty even before they decided to cancel the season. It was like you almost felt like, well, in 2 weeks, are they going to say we're going to go again? Or, there was just like, and the kids, I've been doing this forever, but, if you're a senior in high school and, we had 8 seniors that were all starters during that year, last year, and they had really looked forward to it. They knew they were going to have a pretty good group, and they really had great team chemistry. There was a lot of good things about it. And so whether you're going to win some games or, lose them all, it's just kind of a bad feeling for you. But like I told them, I said, it's not like it's just us. It's everybody in the country, not just in Arizona, not just high school baseball. We're talking everybody. So I think it was a little bit easier pill to swallow. I think as we started up this year, it kind of brought back some of those bad memories. But, the kids are resilient, and, they'll get over it. It's something, like I told them, it's something you can tell your grandkids. You'll probably be the only ones, hopefully, that have to deal with this. But, it wasn't fun. But I think our kids handled it well. We had a great group, and, it is what it is. You can't turn back the clock, so might as well move forward.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we can't turn back the clock, because I know a few people can think of a few incidents and events that they'd like to reset to prevent that 2020 pandemic and the current pandemic we are in. But a great point, Coach, is, I have a lot of respect and a lot of feelings of happiness that I was not in the position that you were to have to tell a kid that during their senior year, it's over. For NCAA, obviously there is that possibility of going, oh, well, I just had my COVID year, so I get to come back the next season. It's no big deal. But I can't imagine any easy conversations with any senior from last year regarding this pandemic. But again, we are speaking with Prescott High School baseball coach Kent Winslow. Coach, in 2019, very solid year for the Badgers, 14-4, and included a playoff trip. Obviously, 2020 got off to a relatively good start. You guys were 2-1 in 2020. How do you carry that momentum from 2019 into 2021, having lost that middle year with 2020?
Yeah, I don't know if you can carry any momentum, honestly. It's kind of difficult enough sometimes to just go year to year, but when you basically, we not only lost, the spring season, all high schools were kind of in the same boat. Now, obviously, people in the metro areas in Phoenix and Tucson, kids are hooked up to club balls a lot easier, than our kids can. We had a few kids go down and play some club ball, but again, it's not a team situation. You couldn't evaluate anybody. I'm still trying to evaluate, who I'm going to stick on varsity right now. At this point, normally it's pretty much solidified because I've watched them all summer and I've had them in fall ball, that kind of stuff. So it's just different. We really only have one young man returning that actually got any kind of real starting playing time. He was kind of our shortstop when our shortstop pitched. So yeah, it was going to be a rebuilding year, if you want to call it that, in some respects. And then when you miss everything that way, but I think in some respects it might be an advantage for us because, the teams that have veterans coming back, they didn't get to play as a team either. So I think it kind of puts everybody on a level playing field. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, you even talked about it earlier in the interview. You had said that you had 8 seniors graduate last year, and assuming that all 8 were starters, that's almost 90% of your starting 9 out for next season. And now you've got that middle period. As you said, there was really no summer workouts. There was some fall ball. There was some winter tryouts, but realistically, you're still kind of putting together the pieces for your team with that lost season in 2020. So I want to kind of transition here, Coach. The region itself, how do you feel about Prescott's chances in the region, considering that in itself, Bradshaw is another school that lost a good amount of seniors. I know Mingus has lost a few key seniors from their team last year. There are teams throughout the region who might be in worse situations going, well, we've got mostly JV kids coming up and we've got a lot of new faces, and, we're going to try to get through what we can. I spoke with Coach Teague last week on the show. He is the softball coach over at Camp Verde. He was telling me that they were having trouble filling out their JV roster, that they only had about 8 kids to start out, and they're looking for some more players. So I want to get in your opinion, Coach. Do you feel that with the lost season in 2020, that makes the region completely wide open to anybody?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, our region has been that way, honestly, for the last 4 or 5 years anyway. There hadn't been anybody that's really dominated. Even when Lee Williams and us finished, tied 13-1 a couple of years ago, it wasn't like, we lost to each other. But, I mean, every other game that we played was pretty much a dogfight. I mean, the teams are very evenly matched, and some very, very good coaching in our region. And, typically we send 3 or 4 teams to the state playoffs every year out of our region. So, yeah, I expect it to be another wide open kind of affair. I honestly, again, it's really hard to determine, to think, okay, now which guys did they have 2 years ago? I mean, really. So I just know that, I know the guys will be well coached, because we've got some really good coaches in this region, and it'll be fun. It'll be kind of like you said, it'll be kind of a crapshoot, roll the dice, and, hopefully you show up and play well on a given day and, get things going your way. But I wouldn't be a betting man on who was going to win this thing this year. Not much of a betting man anyway, but like I said, I think it's anybody's ball game that way. So we'll see. It'll be fun.
Coach, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier in the interview, but I do want to ask, how were the numbers in terms of turnout for fall and winter practices? Are there any concerns you may not be able to field a JV and freshman team? What's the experience level been? How has just the turnout in general been for fall and winter practice?
It's kind of funny. I think because of COVID, I've had more kids in early, volunteer workouts than I've had in forever. I mean, I have enough kids coming as freshmen already that we have more than enough for a freshman and JV team. So we've had some really good teams in the past where I've had to, scrape around and ask kids in my PE class, hey, do you know how to play catch? And, we got 9 guys out here. We need 3 more. But that isn't the case. Last year when it got canceled, we had good numbers. And then again, this year we got great numbers again. So that part of it, I'm really thankful for. And it's funny, like I said, we have more kids in early season workouts than I can remember. So it's been really good that way. I think they're tired of getting locked in. I mean, their parents are probably forcing them out of the house. Hey, you can go now. Get out of here, please. But it's been good that way. Good kids. We got good kids at Prescott. It's a lot of fun. So it's good.
Yeah, and that's great to hear that you guys are going to be able to field that JV and freshman team, especially having a plethora of freshmen at those lower levels to continue the success that the Prescott baseball program has had in the past, minus 2020, obviously. But, Coach, you talk a little bit about it. I'm curious, though. Are you sort of recruiting and taking a look at some of the other sports in Prescott and going, you know what, the receiver's got some pretty good hands. I need an outfielder. Or maybe the basketball team's got a real tall kid and you want to make him a pitcher. Where are you doing any sort of in-school cross recruiting at all, talking to Coach Collette about some of the wrestlers he's got or some of the football players? Any sort of cross recruiting there during the season?
Well, we were very fortunate at Prescott with basketball and football. All 3 of us are very close. Travis, very good friend of mine. Cody, him and I share an office. So it's funny. Last year, when I had all those senior baseball players, I think 5 of the 8 played football for him. And so he said, gosh, if I didn't have your baseball players, we wouldn't have been worth a hoot, but, and it's kind of the same way. I have 2 kids playing basketball right now for Travis. It'll be potential starters for us, a junior and a senior. And so we're good that way. We're a small school. We know we got to share athletes. Nobody's selfish. It's been a really good working relationship that way. So it's good for kids. I think it's how it should be. Obviously, some places when you get higher up in divisions, that becomes a little bit more of a challenge just for the amount of talent that's out there. But it's still small town, athletics, so it's good. It's Americana.
Yeah, so a small town living here in northern Arizona with Coach Kent of Prescott baseball. Yeah, you do make a great point. I would assume that in your 5A and 6As, you see a lot of guys who are, I just play football. I'm only doing football. Yeah. I don't want to get hurt in baseball or basketball or whatever it may be. But Coach, before we let you go, I want to ask you, you've got a game coming up March 12th. That is the first game of the season, taking on Gilbert. How are you feeling about the team's chances against Gilbert? And how are you feeling in general about the 2021 season before we get started?
We normally have played Gilbert in a scrimmage. I hooked up with him years ago. I mean, literally, it's been probably about 15 years since we've been doing this, and I've actually done it at 2 other schools in between. When I was at South Point, I said, hey, Matt, you want to play? And he said, sure. And he always liked it because I always came to his place when I was at Prescott. We liked it because we knew we were going to get to play on a great field in good weather. So when we talked this year, because of the condensing of the season, he's like, Coach, I need a game. I only have 17, and I'd rather play you for reals rather than make it a scrimmage. And I said, hey, let's do it, and we could do it all 3 levels, and that gave our freshmen an extra game. They were at 16, so that gave them 17. So it was just kind of a no-brainer. We typically aren't quite as polished as they are early in the year. We go down there and usually get it handed to us in our scrimmage, but you're going to get to play against a good 5A team, and they like playing against us because they know that we're going to come and compete no matter what we look like at that time of the year. But so it'll be fun. It'll be a night game, which is kind of unusual. And like I say, I've known the guys there at Gilbert forever, and they've had a very constant coaching staff. So it's almost like it's somebody that you play in conference. They come to my tournament in the summer every year. And, so it's just kind of one of those things that, we got to keep doing this. So, yeah, we're going to show up and compete. And beyond that, I don't know if I can make a whole lot of predictions. So.
Well, again, you said it best, Coach. You're not a betting man, but you know what? Regardless, we're optimistic about the 2021 season. We're looking forward to seeing some Prescott baseball this season. Again, the Badgers' first game is March 12th against Gilbert. Coach Kent Winslow, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show, and we hope to bring you back again a little later and hopefully talk some playoffs.
All right. That sounds good. That'd be all right with me.
All right. Well, that sounds good to me as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more sports right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. I'd like to thank you for watching and listening along. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the AIA met earlier this week to discuss the mask mandate for the remainder of the winter season going into the spring, and here's what happened. The AIA approved the removal of the in-competition mask mandate for the start of the winter sports playoffs going into the spring regular season. So what that means is if a player, or I should say if a student, is actively participating in their respective sport, if they're playing third base for the baseball team, if they're playing forward for the soccer team, point guard for the basketball team, if they are on the floor, the mat, the field, they will not have to wear a mask. Where we will see mask wearing is on the sidelines. Coaches, faculty, staff, reserve players, they will all be masked up. But those who are actively participating in the sport will not have to wear a mask. Referees will also not have to wear a mask for the remainder of the winter season and going into the spring as well. There were concerns from coaches and other people about the difficulties athletes are having wearing the masks during their respective sports. There was also some inconsistencies in the mask enforcement. Honestly, it does make a lot of sense. A lot of the sports are moving more outdoors for the spring season, so it does make a lot of sense to sort of remove one aspect of that mask mandate. So again, if a student is actively participating in their sport, they will not have to wear a mask. Referees will also not have to wear a mask. We will only see them on the sidelines, again, for faculty, staff, coaches, and reserve players. We will discuss this new mask mandate and any other changes for the spring season with Executive Director for the AIA, David Hines, on next week's show. We will also be joined by Paul Ventura of Mingus Union High School girls basketball. He'll talk about his varsity program season. All of that and a whole lot more on the next episode of Off the Bench. For all my guests this week, I'm Philip Katafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.